Hi there, it's Dr. JOYLYN Maniaci, and welcome to your Power Hour. This is your time to put what's on your mind on my mind, and we'll talk about it, all right? This is real talk. There's no fluff, there's no BS. Your questions are informing our conversation. And I am thrilled to the gills today because this is this is a question from one of our members, and she said, is there a correlation between feeling defeated and self-sabotage? And if so, how or why? Okay, so this is the real talk that's coming from you, and it is powerful. I don't know if you guys, I've talked about it a bunch. Today is a full moon. So if you're feeling a little bit restless or jittery, there has been a whole lot that's been shaking and quaking to the surface. It's been releasing and moving out, and now we get to energize what it is we'd really like. So I think this is such amazing timing to talk about this stuff, which I'm going to say is emotional addiction and self-sabotage. And here is how, okay? So, is there a connection between feeling defeated and self-sabotage? The short answer is yes, absolutely. Now, they are very connected. And here is how and the why. And in this, yeah, full moon for sure, Selena. So as we're talking about this, I just want we are going to cover emotional addiction, subconscious function and operation, motivational interviewing from psychology. So we've had a whole bunch of new members, and so we are covering emotional stuff, brain and sciencey stuff, and the happiness, how to create sustainable happiness. We're getting all of this in here today. It is packed, all right? And I'm also always going to talk about how to change these things, because knowledge is only half of the battle, okay? If we all just completely understood things and that was all that it took to create change, we'd all already be there, you know? Well, I might fill in a couple of missing pieces and say things in a different way to make them really land and sink in, but then also how to apply it so that you can actually get the change you're looking for, okay? So let's dive in. And we're talking about the subconscious, okay? Now, the subconscious is basically, a group. It's basically functions that do not require conscious control. We don't have to think about it. And the reason that we don't have to think about it is because they're required for survival. They need to be going on all the time. And if we had to think about it all the time, we could do nothing else, okay? So these are things like breathing, heart rate, digestion or sphincter control, reflexes, blinking, swallowing. All of these things are in the subconscious realm, okay? And in our brain, we now know that neurons that wire together fire together, okay? So that there's like all these groupings. There's also that the parts anatomically that are close together often work together and are influenced and influencing the parts that are around it, okay? So when we're talking about the subconscious, it's basically what's below the gray matter, more or less, And that's going to include groupings like the amygdala, the limbic system, the hippocampus, the hypothalamus. Okay, these things are all close together. The basal ganglia that generates dopamine. All of these things are grouped together. So what we can take from that is our fear center, our emotional center, and our drive for connection. That's the limbic, it needs the connecting part, oxytocin. And the hippocampus, hypothalamus, I always get those confused because they both start with H. But that's a large part of one of them's memory, one of them's the reticular activating system, what we pay attention to and what gets our attention, what gets filtered to where it actually becomes conscious, what we're aware of, okay? So emotion, memory, and attention are all closely associated, anatomically, functionally, and operationally, okay? And we kind of know that, but hey, now we know why. Okay, so the basic function of the subconscious is survival. It's not a creative function or process, okay? It's basically a recording device saying, here's what's happened, this is what we know works. It's very literal. And especially, I hate when people are sarcastic with children, because before the age of, nearly, I think it's high school, that they really understand that you're not meaning what you're saying. This is how sarcasm can be very damaging. This is why lack of vulnerability can be very damaging. The subconscious doesn't know that we're just joking when we say, oh, I'm such a piece of crap. It records that and says, I'm a piece of crap. I will then attract things that make that true. We can't lie to ourselves and we can't joke around with ourselves. Our subconscious is very literal, okay? And it's driving most of our behavior. I can't remember the source, but I know it was between 70 and 90% of who we are, what we say, what we're thinking, how we're behaving is driven by our subconscious, and that's going to include our emotional responses too. And again, I'm just going to reiterate, it is not imaginative. There's no creative process here. It can only project onto the future things from the past. It can only know what's already happened. It can't know or think about what might happen. That's not a subconscious function, okay? So then we're moving into addiction. And I'm talking about emotional addiction, but this really applies to all addiction, that addiction is in the absence of connection. It's a means to create a connection to self-soothe or in some way ensure survival, which might, when you're ensuring survival, might mean you are holding off shock and trauma, because that could actually overwhelm the system, okay? So there's a very protective function in the subconscious, and addiction plays into that. And what happens is we usually find something to self-soothe that got us out of a heap of trouble, that got us the attention or affection or reassurance or something that we needed at one point, because we are tribal, so we will need those connections. So something that worked, we just try to do it over and over and over again. Addiction's what happens when we refuse to see that it's not working, and it's not working anymore, basically, okay? And then addiction, what happens is if we've repeated it so much, and I'm going to talk about it again here in a second, we call up and generate this chemistry so much that we actually condition our bodies to this and habituate to this, to where then our bodies crave this chemical mix, okay? Now, it's important that when I say in the absence of connection, because I think it was a Harvard study on rats, they found that the rats did not take the bottle that was laced with cocaine when they were in a stimulating environment with mazes and things and other healthy rats. They did not take the drug. And so extrapolating this is that we're driven to these things when there's some sort of broken connection. And for a lot of us, that happened really early on, trauma, infancy, and then there's so much emotional disconnect, and we'll get to that. But the behavior that soothed and at one point connected is how this thing got started, but now it's gone, and to where it's only serving itself. It's only creating that chemistry that makes it want more. That's what addiction does, is as soon as you have it, you want more of it. And that's the habituation that's happened, okay? Now, most people don't even think, how could you possibly get addicted to emotions? Yeah, cycles backed up by patterns built up by model beliefs. Exactly, Thomas. People think that addiction, so many people think addiction is to a substance. But a lot of us here know that there's also addiction to food, which is a substance, situations, drama, people that will call in these things, and our emotions play into that, okay? Because it's all just chemistry. Because that's what emotions are. There's these thoughts, these electricity that's going on in the brain. That's our thoughts, and it's via synapses and the neurons and things. Then it hits things, and we've got a chemical release. That's what emotions are. That's how the body gets involved. So it's like emotions are a beautiful bridge between this sort of electric, ethereal, non-tangible into the physical. And we use emotions, a lot of us use emotions to substitute for a different one. And we'll substitute one for one that's been more permissible, that in our childhood, this one's okay, but that's not okay. So we will just map this one, like we'll allow ourselves to have this one, but not this one. So anytime I feel this one, I will switch to this one. Things that maybe we recognize we didn't like. Oh, I remember when I expressed this, it didn't work out, so I'll never do that again. And we just cut ourselves off that way. Or we actually have connected through an emotion. When I felt this is how I got the attention and the affection and the connection that I was wanting. So this is who I am now. This is me, okay? Sort of saying the same thing in slightly different variations, okay? But when it comes to emotions, all of that process is happening so early on. And one of the things that's also happening that's informing this is we're calibrating to the people who we're surrounded by. Because we're social, tribal beings, we know that our survival is connected to our fitting in and being accepted. And what's the best way? What do they say? Flattery is the highest form of compliment. So what do? We emulate these people because it's complimenting them, so they will like us because we look like them, so that we get to stay in the tribe and we get to be alive, okay? And this is all happening subconsciously, and most of it's happening before we're 6 years old. So it's all with when we're in theta brainwave patterns, so that there is no analytical filter to say, is this going to work out well for me? Is this true to me? Is this how I want to show up in my life? Is this really going to work out long term? None of those things are possible, okay? And none of us also looking at, wow, I want to be just like you, but you hate yourself, so I have to hate myself to be like you. That's not going to work out for me. We don't have that capability, okay? So this is happening really early on, all right? And because a lot of us are empaths, we came into some broken or dysfunctional family patterns. So there's a lot of low vibe, low frequency stuff going on, okay? And then you add into this, on top of this, if this wasn't enough, sometimes we get additional trauma, and trauma will knock us off balance because it will actually desynchronize the hemispheres of the brain, so that it's a stunted fight or flight pattern. So you've got this huge amount of stress chemicals being released in your system, and they don't get to be resolved. We don't actually get to play out the action, the movement that would actually allow for the resolution and metabolism of those chemicals, so they stay there. Now, if you're in a healthier family system, it does get to be resolved through completion over time, and that's through what we call co-regulation, healthy connection and co-regulation, being able to see and resonate with a lower frequency, like not lower, calmer frequency, a less stress frequency, looking at people, seeing them smile, hearing the tone of their voice that's reassuring we're okay, and we get that to where it will start to allow these other things to go away, be metabolized, okay? But for a lot of us, that didn't happen, and depending on the trauma and how severe it was, there's just then this elevated baseline to where we're basically chronically stressed, and still are, okay? So this is happening. And that baseline then, that's who we start to know ourselves as. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about the habit of becoming ourselves. We just habituate to this, and we think that this level of stress, this threshold, this tiny little bandwidth of emotional, normal, okay, that's who we are. And a lot of times it's even, still a little bit amped or charged. We're easily triggered. We're very reactive. So that's what we're getting used to. That's what we're knowing ourselves as, okay? And so this is all playing out. And then by and large, let's see, a lot of this is happening below the conscious level. We've habituated to it. It's now just part of who we are. It's normal operating procedure, and we're not dead, so the subconscious thinks, okay, we got this covered. We know how to do this. We know how to amp and stay alive. Yeah, it's stressful, but not important. We're alive, okay? That's all the subconscious is really like, that's its goal, okay? And then there's other things playing into this, again, on the subconscious level that don't get factored in, is our diet. chemistry, other chemistry that will mess up the system. When we eat really horribly, lots of toxins, too much carbohydrates, too much gluten, things like that, that start to allow our gut bacteria to become more inhabited by the bad guys, they let out a lot of toxins. And then that starts to make the cells of our intestines get further, so they become leaky. So then those toxins get into our bloodstream. It's just a chemical shit show, okay? So dietary and eating things that you know aren't good for you will actually impact you to a greater extent. This is also your second brain. Lots of neurochemistry happening down here, okay? It's the second largest producer of serotonin. Okay, couldn't think of the word. Hydration. If you're thirsty, that will create fight or flight because thirst is necessary for survival, but a lot of us don't pay enough attention. Lighting and sounds, the amount of stimulation. Also, we tend to get amped until we just explode because we don't have that level of self-awareness going on. And then emotions. Most of us are not super emotionally aware. We haven't been taught that. Nobody modeled that. Everybody's been playing this game of put on the mask, here's what's acceptable, here's what's not, and we're just going to pretend we're this. That's what we saw. There hasn't been a lot of people actually giving us non-judgmental space and asking us to really go into, how are you feeling? What is that? And then even now, there's even some that I feel like, or I feel that. That's a way to not trigger somebody else. So that's a way to talk about, but it creates and exacerbates the disconnection from ourselves, which is part of why we need the addiction in the first place, okay? We deny ourselves a lot of our own experience for the purpose of making somebody else's experience more comfortable, which isn't always bad. But when it's not necessary for survival, because we're adults now, it starts to become dysfunctional, and that's on us, okay? So now, I think I've thrown a lot at you. I'm going to pause. I'm going to take a drink of water. I'm just going to let this sit in. Give me an emoji. Let me know you're with me, because I don't want to totally steamroll you today. Sweet, we got some. Okay, you're with me. Great. Moving on. With oxygen now. So emotional addiction is, like I said, it's using an emotion to substitute for a different emotion, to cover one up. And so we're just generating chemistry internally. Now, for example, I used to use anger instead of sadness because I do not like feeling sadness. Thanks for the rainbow, Thomas. I love those. I don't know if Julie's available today. She usually gives me rainbows, so thank you. But I would rather feel almost anything but sadness, and because I'm me, and this is what I do for my job, and this is part of who I am, all the emotions are okay, so I'll just pick one that doesn't feel as powerless as sadness, okay? So I used to be a rage ball because loneliness and sadness were the things that I hated the most and created the most internal discomfort for me. But anger, it gave me a sense of power and potency, so I would definitely go to that. I used that too much, started deteriorating my relationships, and then I was like, okay, I have to change this. This is how it usually goes. Now, I actually can see I use confusion. I use confusion instead of having uncertainty or even in place of confidence. I will go to confusion instead of just making a choice and feeling good about that. I will use confusion to insert some level of self-doubt and create a swirling pattern to where I don't actually have to move forward, because moving forward introduces uncertainty, which to the subconscious is certain death. So I've got more work to do, and I'll get to what that work is in just a second. I've got a client that used depression instead of grief. Because a lot of us, in growing up, in becoming the parent that we didn't have, there will be some grief and mourning for what we didn't get that we actually deserved and that we really just wanted that wasn't available. And there's sadness there. But a lot of us will go too far into it and go into some sort of depression to where we'll create a space where we get to wallow, or then it gets so bad that then people come to our rescue instead of actually just abiding with what is so we can move through it. And then, yes, we can use defeat. I've used that one too. It's a way of concluding the future so you don't have to confront and keep going. It is a way for the subconscious to keep you alive. Because here's the thing with all of these, with the anger, with the grief or the depression, with the confusion, with the defeat, is they allow us to stay exactly where we are. And it allows us to stay there even though we might start be gaining awareness to where we're feeling heavy, lethargic, weighed down, defeated, low. It's either A, at some point gotten us a connection that we valued and wanted, and perhaps it still is, so we have to look and see if we're still getting that through this. Hey, Julie, welcome. And also, it's, again, the subconscious being like, rock this one. We just bypassed doing that future thing that was definitely just the black void where there's nothingness. So that means we're not there. It's death. It has to be. What else could it possibly be? It's black, like X's over the eyes, like a little cartoon. And so your body says, your subconscious gets some story and some narrative, and it generates that chemistry to where you don't want to do anything, and then it knows it has succeeded. It has kept you alive. Okay? So that's what it is. It's just a survival mechanism. All right? And it's sort of unfortunate that this has been called self-sabotage. And the reason it is because you're consciously aware that you want something else, but you haven't done enough conscious work and used the conscious function of your brain in a way that allows your subconscious to work for you, so it can only subvert you and get in the way. But what it's really trying to do is just keep you alive. You are precious to your subconscious. The creator that created all of us, this consciousness, the organization and beauty that we're all a part of, would not have created this just for the sole purpose of fucking up our lives. It's a part of the perfection, and it's keeping us alive. It's got a true function. And if we can recognize that, and also recognize that memory and attention are going to be very, very closely tied with this, that then we can start to change that. I'm going to get to that in just a second, okay? So I just want to take a minute to start, let's just get out of the judgment, because the subconscious is just doing what it's designed to do. It's keeping you alive. And the only reason we call it self-sabotage is because we're judging the function and we're ready to have something different. There's just a little bit more work we have to do to actually make that possible, okay? So, if we know this, we can have some grace with ourselves. Remember, memory and attention are closely associated with this. And know that it came from really, really early on when you did not have an analytical filter, but you do now, so we can use that now. So this is good news, okay? Silver linings all over the place, sparkles and glitter here too, okay? So how do we get out of this? It's going to be, the name of the game is, number one, bring the subconscious to the conscious level. You have to bring it up to actual awareness so that it becomes available to change. And until we do, it will continue to drive our behavior. Okay, 70 to 90%, that's it. All right. So, and we're going to have to learn how to use our higher functioning processes and develop some skills so that we can do this with greater ease instead of fighting ourselves and beating ourselves up and staying here. Okay. And then knowing that an emotional addiction and substance abuse, because they all actually come down to this internal chemistry, okay? And there's going to be an emotion involved in this. So emotional addiction is the bottom line. It's a habit and it's a disconnect. And most often now at this point, it's a disconnect from ourselves that we're being called to heal. And a disconnection from source, knowing that we're a part of something greater and we are important. So there's a lot of self-esteem that can come into play now. And then once we have those two connections in place, our connections with others is going to be so much better and healthier, to where the codependency, the anger, rage, like all the distractions, they're going to fall away to a great deal, okay? Now I will say, just because somebody has a title like mother, brother, father, sister, something like that, does not necessarily mean that those will be the people who are going to be the healthy relationships in your life, okay? They may not. Everything can change. How it changes and how it plays out is totally up to the universe and what other people are choosing, okay? All we can do is choose for ourselves. Just going to put that disclaimer in there, okay? All right, so here's your steps. Ooh, and I got to talk fast. I got 5 minutes left. We got to stop it, okay? Like Bob Newhart says, stop it. And you know how I'm like, hey, like that doesn't help because the subconscious needs a place to go. We'll get to that. But what I'm talking about is let's refrain from judgment here. Stop judging the habit. Stop judging where you are that you have it, okay? I have talked about the stages of change. This is the motivational interviewing in psychology. Knowing that you want something else, you have to know what stage of change you're actually ready for and working at that stage to move you to the next stage and then to the next and then to the next. Because if you're actually just sort of starting to become aware that there's a problem and then you go full on into some behavior change to try to fix it, you haven't gone through the other steps to where you'll end up backsliding. And that's what relapse a lot of times is. And that's actually still part of the process, so still no reason to judge, okay? It's just there is information that's available on the stages of change. They're actually in my book, Goddess's Guide to Breakups, that can actually help you move through those with more grace and ease, okay? So that's good to know. Number 2, be aware of it happening. This is starting to pay attention to you, to your body, to your emotional status, to the behaviors. I start to know when something's really, really bothering me when I keep munching things. And I'm like, what's going on? It's starting to become a signal. Instead of a reason to judge myself, it's a signal what needs to be healed here, okay? And I love, you know how I love rhymes, name it to tame it. To start to become aware and be curious about what is the feeling I'm actually feeling, what is actually going on here. And then when you see you're in this pattern, all you have to do to start, no matter what stage of change you're in, is to create a pattern interrupt. And because this thing, this habit, this addiction is not going to get dismantled in one thing. What you have to do, it's like Jenga. You have to start at the top, you know, to try to pull those little pieces out, and then, you know, then you get the linchpin that pulls them all out. If you pull the linchpin right from the start, it's too much. There's too much instability, and the change often isn't sustainable that way. As we work through these stages of change, and as we release the judgment, as we start challenging, as we start doing these pattern interrupts and creating more and more space between us and our habit and our reaction in this addiction, there's time for us to integrate this so that it becomes who we are, and we start to become more aware of our values and our priorities and the choices that we make, including the choices of thoughts that we have. So I know you're probably like me and you want it all right now because you're now aware that it's annoying or dysfunctional or not working for you, and so you're ready to change it yesterday, okay? I know. And still, we slow down to speed up. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Okay, so this is really the way to go. Pattern interrupt. Okay, because your choices are cumulative and this change is going to be more sustainable. Creating a pattern interrupt, as soon as you recognize that you're in some sort of volatile reaction and or addiction loop, you can do any or all of the following. Blinking really fast. Like I said, anything that is under subconscious control that you can take control of, because sphincters is not, well, there's a couple that you can, but blinking really fast is one of those things. Even doing anything that's a non-pattern behavior, you can do. An intentional breath. And I say a slow inhale and an audible exhale, because what we're also going to try to do is let our subconscious know we're safe. So when we exhale audibly, that is a relaxation breath, and it's a non-prey breathing. If you're prey, meaning you're being hunted and likely to die, you breathe really silently. You try to go invisible so that nobody can catch you. So if we give ourselves a sigh, we actually tell our subconscious, it's okay, I'm here. Doing a pose, like I said, any kind of muscle gesture that is non-habitual, the power pose, and holding that and saying, I'm in control. The victory pose, saying, I feel like I'm losing ground, but I'm going to claim victory. Even sometimes a failure gesture, which is wiping your hands, wiping your brow, wiping your legs, something that says, I'm starting again right now. I've got conscious control, I've just taken over. Smiling in the mirror can also help. It turns on your mirror neurons. If you're in the 6-week challenge, you're going to see this in real depth. But you can use yourself in a mirror to co-regulate and show yourself that you're okay. All right? But you have to do something to get the attention of the subconscious that the conscious is now in control. All right? We're not victims or martyrs to our subconscious patterns, okay? This is something that, yes, even though it kind of got issued to us when we were young and it didn't get filtered, now it's in our lap, it's in our life, and so it's up to us to change, okay? Yes, a default reset. That's exactly what we're doing, all right? Then we're going to challenge this, okay? Emotions only last for 90 seconds without a thought. So if these things keep going on and on, we're feeding them. So we're going to have to start being aware of our thoughts and challenging them. Are they true? Are they beneficial? What are they creating? Okay? What is it we're telling ourselves about ourselves and our life in this situation? Is it accurate? We have to start being more willing to be accurate than be right about who we think we are, which is actually a collection of habit patterns and an emotional addiction at this point. Okay? Ways you can do this are to talk out loud. I, a lot of times, will talk to my spiritual team out loud. I will journal, or get a coach. Seriously, this is one of my gifts. But get someone that you're talking to, and it's not talking to see what's true. You are listening and hearing what you're telling yourself. To where it used to be, before I understood, this is a huge, huge difference. And this is like, put this in your back pocket. But if you work with me, you're going to get a million more tools like this. But journaling can be beneficial if you know how to use the tool. But if you don't know how to use the tool, like I used to do 10 years ago, and journal and just see, look it, this is why my life is crap. See, I hate myself. See, there's a million reasons for me to not like myself. But now I journal and I see what I wrote, and this is what I've been telling myself. No wonder this is what's showing up. No wonder I feel like this. And it comes up to be visible, to become available for change. These tools are to get the subconscious to conscious, not to say, yeah, that's what's true, okay? Because the level of intensity of your feeling does not equate to any level of truth. That is a fallacy that I built my life on for a long time, so I'm very emotional. And when things were really intense, I thought that meant that they were extra true. But the level of intensity means that this is how tightly I'm holding on to it, because it has that much to do with my identity. There you go. Okay, then what are we going to do? Number 5? You're going to love this because I love this. You're going to love the shit out of yourself, okay? That is what we're going to do. We are going to love ourselves out of this because judging ourselves hasn't worked and it's never going to. I believe that you and I have experimented thoroughly with trying to judge ourselves into change and it's not working. So let's try the loving instead. And I'm going to tell you from my experience, way better success rate and a lot more ease and fun in the process, okay? And challenging it is part of this. That's part of how we show ourselves we love ourselves is we're going to be like, I don't know if this is true or beneficial to me in my future. Maybe I should take a look at that. That's a level of self-love, okay? You're also, like we talked about, the 3 keys to boosting self-love. You're going to watch your mouth. You're going to watch what you're telling yourself about yourself, and you're going to look at what you're going to consume. And that's actually food. We talked about that, but also the content that you're consuming. What are the blogs you're reading? What are the TV shows that you're watching? What's the company you keep in the conversations that you're having? Is it very gossipy? Because those are all really low-level things that will keep us in this cesspool of, chemistry yuck, okay? And I just read this on a friend's page. She just posted this. The degree to which you feel the fear, the worry, the anxiety is the direct correlation to the love that's available to you that you're not receiving. And a lot of this is love that can come from you that's available to you because that's why it's hurting so bad, is because it really wants to be healed now. And when we heal that, the health of this relationship with this one, this numero uno, determines the health of all the other ones. So that's how we generate the change in our outsides, okay? Not trying to put the power on them, tell them we need them to do this, we need them to behave this way. If only you did this, then I'd be okay. That's not how it works, okay? Loving ourselves enough to pay attention to what we're paying attention to hold ourselves accountable and be like, I've told myself that a lot, but that's actually bullshit. I'm not powerless here. I can. I've actually seen that on my bike where I was like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. And now I've started actually saying out loud, I can. And I'm getting over obstacles that before used to stop me and have me bail and get off and walk my bike over a section. And now I can ride it, okay? Self-love builds self-esteem. And then part of this self-love, what's going to be required is, we're releasing a lot. We're also going to have to do what I call upskilling, okay? We did not get a lot of skills. Everything's a skill. Everything can be learned, but it wasn't modeled for us, so we're going to have to learn these things now. Emotional handling. And again, Goddess's Guide to Breakups. I've done Power Hour on this several times. Things to do to actually help handling intense emotions so you don't just go into buying that the intensity is real. Drink some water, take a breath, hug a tree, do some EFT tapping, singing, things that will tonify the vagus nerve. There's a lot. I'm not going to go into tons of depth because I'm already over time. Communication, learning how to expand your emotional vocabulary. Watching your language patterns so that you're not saying, I feel like or I feel that, because that's actually maintaining that separation from yourself, but actually getting down to that raw vulnerability of, I feel lonely. I feel scared. I feel so happy, I don't even know how to handle this, because that happens too. And then, of course, we're going to talk future forward focus. This is a different way of thinking. It's a new skill of looking forward and prioritizing your future. And this future forward is where we're looking to what it is we'd like to have and create and starting to generate the feelings of having it. And by doing it, number one, we make this future less scary to our subconscious so that it doesn't have to try to kill it, because it actually has an idea of how it feels and what it looks like. It's more familiar. And then we also give it somewhere else to go. We give it somewhere else to do. Hey, instead of looking at this worry stuff that you like to do so much, why don't we envision this? But then by sending out those electrical thoughts, generating those feelings, you're starting to use quantum physics to bring that into reality right now. And that's a skill. A lot of it's sometimes just taking time to actually do that and have those conversations. Now I could talk about that all day. Got to cut this out. Because getting out of judgment, expanding our awareness, interrupting and challenging these thought patterns, these habits and emotional addictions, and then learning new skills, how to actually create connection so that we don't need this self-soothing and coping mechanism, creating a familiarity with our future so that we don't have to stop ourselves where we are because we've got no idea of what that is. That is what I do. This is the benefits of having a coach. You're going to get there if you'd like. You're already here. You're already getting tools. If you want to fast track that, if you want a little bit more ease in the process, if you need somebody who's objective, because sometimes our family and our friends aren't because they're trying to deliver what they think, they've got their own filters, blah, blah, blah. Having someone who can actually hear you and hold you and call you on some of these things is super valuable. And this is what we do in the 90-day relationship model. I'm also going to, for the first time, actually say, yeah, I wrote a book. I am not a best-selling author because I am not a book promoter, but it's there, and it's got a lot of tools and tips for how to break up. It's Goddess's Guide to Breakups, and I'm talking about breaking up with habits and patterns and former identities, as well as other people, because that will happen as you start to love yourself and hold your boundaries. So that's a great book. That's a great resource. I'm going to give that to you if you do the 90-day relationship model because I just want you to have as many resources as possible. But this is what we're talking about, is changing on a level that's deeper than just behavioral, which is where a lot of conventional stuff ends. And that's going to be working on, because the relationship model is about remodeling the relationship you have with yourself so that you know a healthy connection with you and how to maintain it no matter who's around. And a relationship with Source to start to develop and become curious about that so you can have more of that. That's what we're working on. That's what's available. That's what I want to offer and do with you and for you. So message me, find me. I'm available all over the place, okay? So just message me, comment below. Let's talk about if this is something that you'd actually really, really like, because it's something that lights me up, and I like to be part of these transformations for you to where you've got this steady confidence that you can actually be happy without, slapping down some weird call-in crazy life circumstances so that you get, we're actually going to change this baseline. We're going to raise the baseline in a good way to where you have an expanded emotional bandwidth before you ever get triggered, so that there is more peace, ease, calm, happiness, and joy in your life. A really profound gratitude and love for yourself as you are and who you are, and curiosity about who you're becoming. That's even awesomer, Wow. Let's do that, okay? So message me. And then, I've gone a couple minutes over. Thank you so much for staying to the end. I would love it if you guys would hop on over at 1:30. I'm in Mountain Time. It's 12:40 now. At 1:30, I'm going to be in the You Can Prosper Now Summit. If you haven't already, message me, comment. I'll give you a free link so that you get a ticket for free. And if you can't make it to that, you'll get the replays this way. But this is an online summit. It's been going on all day. I'm the last speaker today. And it's all about how to generate more prosperity in your life. And every one of the experts has a free gift for you, so you can just kind of collect some goodies that way. So comment below, hop on over, it'd be fun to see you there. And also introduce you to some new people who can expand your life even further in different areas and talk about things that I don't necessarily cover in Power Hour. So it's a win-win, 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 win-win all over the place. So there you go. I have done the opposite of what my business coach said, and I've offered 2 calls to action. I want you to message me about the 90-day relationship remodel because I want to do that, and I want to see you at the summit. All right. So that's my Wednesday for you. Thank you so much. I love it's like a firecracker explosion of all these emojis. Thank you so much. That just lights me up. And I can't wait to talk to you next week. Mwah.